Hey guys, it's YruRU-style and welcome to my new YruRU tutorial. So just really quick, the reason I'm making a new YruRU tutorial is because the old one was made while the method was still being developed, and therefore there are some things in there that are outdated and it really needs an update. So to start off with, YruRU is a method for one-handed solving. And it was made by Yash Mehta in April of 2020. And the basic idea is that you reduce the cube to R wide, U wide, RU in the first step. Hence the name, YruRU. It stands for Yash's RU reduction. So I'll just give a quick overview of the steps to start off with. So the first step of the method is to solve a CPLine, which is these three pieces in DL like this, and also solving the corner permutation, which is rather complicated, and I'm going to have this video devoted entirely to only this step, but this can be planned fully in inspection. It only takes about 4 to 6 moves on average, and once done you can solve the cube using only R wide, U wide, RU moves, which are very ergonomic for one-handed, and that's pretty much the whole premise of the method. The next step is to extend this line into a YruRU-style first block by adding these three pieces, while also influencing the next step. And this is about 6 to 8 moves on average. And once done, you no longer have to do any U-wide moves. So U-wide moves aren't the best for one-handed, but almost every YruRU solve will have only 2 or 3 U-wide moves. The next step is to orient all the edges similar to a Petrus or ZZ solve. This step is about 6 to 8 moves on average, and while recognition would be difficult for 9 edges, influencing it during the previous solve makes recognition very quick. After EO, the next step is to solve these two edges, DF and DB, as well as the centers. This is usually about 4 moves on average, and again can be heavily influenced during the previous step. And now with all of this done, the cube can be solved using only R and U moves. And that's the methods, so let's get into the CPLine. Alright, so just a few preliminary things. First of all, I am X2, Y2 neutral, which means that I can do any orientations that have white or yellow on top and green or blue in front. So this is because of the EO step that happens in the middle of the solve. Using only these orientations ensures that the EO recognition is consistent. So while you don't have to use yellow top, green front as your starting point, I do recommend being X2, Y2 neutral to make that EO recognition a little bit smoother. Now, for the CPLine, we're going to be numbering the corners. So for the white corners, we're going to have this corner be number 1, this be number 2, number 3, and number 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And then 5 and 6 will be DFR and DBR, which might be these two or might be these two in this orientation. And then the same thing for the yellow corners. We'll have 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 is red-green, 2 is red-blue, 3 is blue-orange, and 4 is green-orange. And 5 and 6 are the other ones that happen to be in DFR or DBR. So in this orientation, we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the general idea of what we're going to do in inspection to plan out how to solve our CPLine is we're going to be tracing the corners in a specific order, and that order is determined by the location of the corners that belong in the D layer in positions 5 and 6. So once we have that tracing, we will be able to decide how to solve the CPLine, which I will cover a little bit later, but I'm going to go over the tracing first and the actual solving afterwards. So this is the simplest case where we have 5 and 6 corners already in their correct positions. Orientation doesn't matter at all in this step. So the way you would trace this is just by going clockwise in the U layer, and this is what we would call a circlet, just going clockwise with these 4 pieces. And the way you want to trace this is by starting with corner number 4 and then finding the next 2 corners. So in this case, we have corner number 4 right here, and the next 2 would be this one, which are 3 and 1. So our tracing would be 3, 1, and I'll talk about what to do with that later. For every circlet I'm going to cover, if you have the same positioning of 5 and 6, but they're simply swapped, so in this case 6 is where 5 belongs and 5 is where 6 belongs, you have the same circlet but in the opposite direction. So instead of going clockwise around the U layer, we'll go counterclockwise. So we'll find corner number 4, the next 2 going counterclockwise would be 2 and 3. So 2, 3 would be our tracing for this case. A similar case happens when we have 5 and 6 next to each other in the U layer like this. I'll start with 5 being in position 1 and 6 being in position 2. We'll kind of extend that clockwise around the U layer circlet to go down into the D layer like this. So our circlet will be like this, going counterclockwise around the R layer. So this tracing, we would find corner number 4 and then do the next 2, so 2, 3. And again, if you simply reverse 5 and 6, you'll have the same thing but the opposite direction. So instead of going this way, we would go this way. So beginning with corner number 4, we would have 2, 1 as our tracing. Now you might also have a case where they are next to each other in the U layer on the right, and we pretty much do the same thing. We kind of follow this same pattern, just skipping over these. So it would be this to this to this to this, 1 to 2 to 5 to 6. And in this case, corner number 4 is here, so we would find the next 2, which would be 2, 1. Now you might also get a case where 5 and 6 are next to each other in the U layer, but neither on the right nor the left. So in this case, you would just kind of imagine there being a U move done, and then you have this circlet that you already know. So from here, we would go this to this to this to this, imagining these were over here, and we're going counterclockwise around the R layer. So in this case, we would start with corner number 4, and our tracing would be 3, 1, like that. Similarly, if you have a case like this, where they're 1 move away from both being in the D layer, just imagine that move being done and trace around the U layer like you would if 5 and 6 were in their correct positions. So we would go clockwise around the U layer. So corner number 4 is here, and we find the next 2, which are 3 and 1. Alright, so that covers the easiest circlets, the ones you can kind of just intuitively figure out. Now for the more complicated ones, where the 5 and 6 corners are not next to each other. So for these, I will be referring to the GitHub page that Mr. Mehta created for this method. Definitely go to that link. It is in the description. If you've gotten this far in the video, you probably actually want to learn this. So definitely go open that link now, because I will be referring to it, and probably a lot of the things I'm going to say aren't going to make a lot of sense if you're not looking at that. Specifically, go to the advanced tracing section under the CPLine category. And don't worry about it saying advanced, the beginner's tracing is actually harder. Now, the way you're going to want to memorize these circlets is not by memorizing which corners to go to in which order, but by memorizing what the circlet looks like. So that's where the images are really nice. You can just envision the way you have to trace the corners on the cube. and what kind of patterns that traces out. So don't memorize these by brute force, just memorizing, 6, then 4, then 2, then 1. You should definitely memorize them more visually. So the first one listed there is the letter N circlet. It sort of looks like a letter N if you go this way. Again, go to the website. It's going to make more sense if you look at the visuals there. But the circlet will go 5 to 4 to 6 to 2. And it goes this direction when 5 is in position 1. So just like all the other ones, if we swap the positions of 5 and 6, we'll have the same circlet, but the opposite direction. So 2 to 6 to 4 to 5. So here we would find corner number 4. The next two would be 3 and 1. The next circlet is the inverted letter N, which goes 1, 4, 2, 6, when 5 is in position 1. So this would give us, starting with corner number 4, 1, 3. And again, reversed if these two corners are swapped. The next circlet is the diamond, where 5 is in 5 and 6 is in 1, or reversed positions. With 5 in position 5, it goes 6, 3, 2, 4. So making this kind of shape. So we would get 4, then 1, then 3. The next circlet is the arrowhead, which is where the pieces are in 2 and 6. So with 6 in its correct position, you will go 3, 1, 4, 5, tracing out the arrowhead like this. And again, if these are reversed, you reverse the direction. So the tracing for this case would be starting at corner number 4, 3, 1. The next circlet is the lightning bolt when 5 and 6 are in 1 and 6. So with 6 being in its correct position, the circlet will go 2, 4, 3, 5. So that direction like that. And reversed, these two corners reversed will just reverse the direction. Tracing for this case would be starting with corner number 4, 3, 2. The next circlet is the inverted lightning bolt, where the 5 and 6 corners are in 5 and 2. So with 5 in its correct position, you would go 6, 4, 3, 1. So tracing for this case would be 2, 3. And if you swap these corners, you reverse the direction. The next circlet is the letter V with an arm. So that's where the two corners are in positions 2 and 4. So with the corner 5 being in position 2, you would trace 6, 3, 5, 1. So this case would give you, starting with corner number 4, 1, 2. And reversing the corners reverses the direction. So we would start with 4 and go 1, 2 this way. The 8th and final circlet is where the two corners are in positions 4 and 6. And with corner 6 in position 6, you would trace this one 5, 1, 3, 2. So locating corner number 4 and looking at the next two, we would have 3, 1. So the basic idea once you have your tracing is that you want to swap one pair of corners, and if you swap the correct pair, that will always solve your CP. So if you have 1, 2 as your tracing, you don't need to swap anything at all. The CP is already solved. But for the other cases, I will show you one possible swap pair and then how to determine the other two possible swap pairs, because you will have 3 possible swap pairs for every tracing. And that just gives you options for your CPLine and usually cuts down on the move count by about 1 or 2 moves. So if you have 1, 3 as your tracing, your possible swap pair is going to be 2, 3. So with my numbering system, these are always going to be the blue corners. So I remember it as 1, 3, you can swap the blue corners, whether you have white or yellow on top. These are still going to be the correct corners to swap. And you need to make sure you swap the blue corners themselves, which are not necessarily going to actually be in these positions. So look for the blue corners wherever they might be and swap those. If your tracing is 2, 1, what I memorize is that the 5 corner swaps with 3. For 2, 3, similar to 1, 3, you can swap the green corners. Either white or yellow, you can swap the green corners. For 3, 1 tracing, you can swap 5 with corner number 1. And for 3, 2 tracing, you can swap 5 with 6. Alright, now I'm going to explain how to determine your other swap pairs. So for this example, I have this line already solved. So the 2 corners that belong in the D layer are these 2. And I can imagine doing an R prime to put them both in the D layer. And then I just have to trace clockwise around the U layer. So we would go starting with corner number 4, 2, 3. So 2, 3 is my tracing, and I'm just going to go ahead and tell you 2, 3 is going to be the tracing for all of the examples in this section, just so it's not too complicated. So 2, 3 means I can swap the green corners, which are right here. Now, whenever you have a swap pair in this position, your other 2 swap pairs will always be diagonal on the R face. And by extension, if your swap pair is one of the diagonals on the R face, your other swap pairs will be this one and the other diagonal on the R face. So just like the circlets, you should memorize this in a visual sense of just having this swap pair, this one, and this one. So if you can swap 1 and 2, you can also swap 3 and 5 and 4 and 6. Now I'm just going to move the pair to the back. The tracing is still 2, 3. You can verify for yourself if you want. But we have one pair here, and if you have a swap pair here, the other ones are going to be this column and then this far diagonal. So we're taking these two and really just moving them over. It's the same ones that need to be swapped. But you should probably visualize this as its own separate thing. So these two, and these two. Then if we move it to here, we have diagonals this way and this way. So if this is one of your possible swap pairs, your other possible ones will be this one and this one. Moving it to here, if you have this swap pair, you will have this one and this one. And then if your swap pair is in the D layer, you will have diagonals on the U layer as your other options. And just like with all the other ones, if you have diagonals on the U layer, that means you will have the other diagonal on the U layer and these two on the D layer. So hopefully that made sense. If it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, I'll be using this concept when I explain the execution and do the example solve, so hopefully you'll catch on a little bit later. Okay, once you've determined which corners you can swap, it's time to talk about the moves we will actually apply to the cube to perform that swap. So I have the same case as before. The tracing is 2, 3, so we can swap the green corners. Now, the triggers you can use to solve or to swap pairs of corners, to swap UFL and UFR, you can do F prime, U prime, F. That will swap those two and solve your CP if you have a swap pair positioned here. For UFR and UBR, you can do F prime UF, or you can also do FR prime F prime, depending on which one influences the rest of the CP line or even the next step in your favor. If you have a swap pair in UBR and UBL, you can do FR F prime to swap those. And if you don't have any of those, you can always do any R and U moves you want to set up to one of those cases. And you can also do slice moves, which don't move the corners, obviously, but you will usually have to solve this edge. So you can add in some slice moves as needed. So for this example, we have 2, 3 tracing, so we have to solve or swap the green corners. So because we have this swap pair, we also have this swap pair and this swap pair. And usually you want to pick the one that's already on the U layer. So in this case, we can use this swap pair because we can just do F prime U F or FR F prime. In this case, it doesn't really matter that much. Okay, so I'm going to do one more example now, and then I'll do more examples at the end of the video, where including ones without the DFL corner already solved. So if you don't understand it after just 2 examples, don't worry, there will be more at the end. So we have these 2 corners solved already again. So we want to locate the other yellow corners, which are here and here. So this is the diamond circlet, and we will be tracing it backwards because the corner number 5 is not in its correct place. So instead of going this way, we're going to be going this way. So starting with corner number 4, the next 2 will be 3, 2. So our tracing is 3, 2. That means we can swap the 2 yellow corners, 5 and 6. And having a swap pair here means we will also have a swap pair here and here. So the one we should probably choose in this case is this one, since it's already in the U layer, and we can just do F prime U F to solve CP, or FR F prime, that works as well. You have 2 options when they're in UBR and UFR. Okay, now I'm going to talk about how to do CPLine when you don't have 2 adjacent corners solved. So in this case, I have this corner matched up with this edge, and the corner that goes with it is here. So I'll be doing a white and red CP line, but this corner is not already solved. So we'll be doing the tracing a little bit differently, but still pretty similar. So what we're going to do first is pretend that this corner is here and that the one that's here is actually here. So instead of having this corner here, we'll just pretend that this corner is the yellow, red, and green. And then we'll trace like normal. So we have corners 5 and 6 here, flipped position. So we would go clockwise around the R face. So finding corner number 4, we would have this, then 3, 2. And we didn't have to trace this corner, but if we did, we would treat it as 1. So 3, 2 is our tracing, which means we can swap the 2 white corners. So this swap pair, or this one, or this one. And this is where it's important to know all 3 possible swap pairs, because only one of them will actually be useful. When you have the 2 corners solved, it's convenient to know all 3 because you can pick the one that's in the U layer. But even if it's not in the U layer, you can get one in the U layer with just 1 or 2 moves. When the corner is unsolved, we need to use the swap pair that includes the corner that is part of the line. So we need the swap pair that includes this corner, which is this one. Now what we want to do is use R and U moves to set up this corner to be an F move away from being solved. Any F move will work. It can be an F2 move, an F move or an F prime move. So in this case, I'll do a U to make it solvable with an F prime. And then we want the corner from its swap pair to be right here in position 3. So for this case, I can do U, R prime to put the corner here, and now F prime, and the CP line is solved. Okay, so here's another example. I have the same two red pieces connected to each other here, and the white, green, red is the last piece that goes in here. So we'll just imagine that this is instead the yellow, orange, and blue, the corner that's where this one belongs. And we'll do the tracing as usual. So number 5 is in position 6 and number 6 is in position 2. So this corresponds to the arrowhead circlet going backwards. So we would start with number 4, and instead of going this way, we would go this way. So the next one is this one, which is not this one, but actually this one. So 3 and then 1. So for 3, 1, we can swap corner 5 with corner 1. So here's corner 5 and here's corner 1. So we have this possible swap pair right here, which means we also have a possible swap pair here and one right here. And this is the one we have to use because it's the one that has this corner belonging in the line. So we need to set this corner up to be solved with some sort of F move and this corner to be in UBR. So this is not a very good case. There's not a very quick way to do it, but what I would probably do is U, R prime, U prime, R prime. So that sets this here and this to be solved with an F move. And the CP line is solved. Now, let me show you what to do if you get 1-2 tracing, because it's a little bit different. You can't just do nothing because you still have to solve the last corner. So I have these two white and red pieces with the last corner here. So I'll just imagine that this piece is actually this one. I have number 5 here in position 1, number 6 here in position 3. So this is the letter N circlet. So we trace like this. So beginning with corner number 4, the next two will be 1, 2. So we have 1, 2 tracing, and we don't have a swap pair, so we can't put anything in UBR and solve this with an F move because we don't have a swap pair. So what we do instead is we set this last corner up to be solved with an F2 and then do FUF. So in this case, we can set it up with RU to position it like this. And then we do FUF, and that will solve the CP line when you have 1, 2 tracing. There's one last case before I get to the examples, and that's where the corner that's part of the line is in place but twisted. Generally, you'll probably just want to avoid this case and pick a different set of corners, but if the edge is solved, it's actually not that bad. So to begin with, you'll do your normal tracing. So we have 5 is in 2 and 6 is in 4. This is the letter V with an arm circlet. So we would trace here, here. This is corner number 4. So the next two are 1, 3. So 1, 3 means we can swap the blue pieces. Having a swap pair here means we also have one here and here. All right, now, once we have our swap pair, we want to position one in the U layer, depending on the direction of the twist. So this one, we need to twist clockwise. So we need a swap pair to be in the front. So in this case, this one will work just fine already where it is. And then we will do F2, U, F. And now CP line is solved. So use R and U moves to position a swap pair to be in the front, and then do F2, U, F prime. If the corner needs to twist counterclockwise, we will do pretty much the same thing, but set up the swap pair to the back, and then solve this with F2 R prime F. So let's do the tracing. We have 5 in position 5, 6 in position 1. So this corresponds to the diamond circlet. So we will go, here's corner number 4, the next two are 3, 1. So for 3, 1, we can swap corner number 5 with corner number 1. So we have a swap pair here, which means we also have diagonals on the U layer, here and here. So to set up a swap pair to be in the back, we can do an R move. So take this diagonal swap pair, do an R move, and that puts it in the back. And then we do F2 R prime F. And that solves the corner, and by positioning the swap pair in the back, the CP line is also solved. Now if you have the corner twisted in place, but you get 1, 2 as you're tracing, i.e. you don't have any swap pairs, you just have to memorize a short algorithm, one for clockwise and one for counterclockwise. The algorithm for clockwise is F2, U, F2, U2, F. And the algorithm for counterclockwise is F2, R prime, F2, R2, F prime. Alright, now I'm just going to do a few example CP lines with random scrambles I got from CS Timer. So this will include cases where the DL edge isn't solved, which I haven't covered yet, but basically you just use R and U moves to move it around and then solve it with an S move. So let me take a look at this scramble. None of the corners are especially good. I guess I'll do the yellow and orange corners. So we'll have this corner here and then this corner here. So since this one's unsolved, I'll just mentally pretend it's this one. And it looks like I have corner 5 here and corner 6 here. So the circlet would go this way. So starting with 4, I would have, this is actually this piece, so 2, 3. So 2, 3 means we can swap the green pieces, and that means we have diagonal swaps on the top. So we have to use this swap pair because it includes our yellow-orange corner. So we want to put this in UBR and this in F move away from being solved. Now I also see the edge that goes here is yellow-orange. So I think I'll just solve this with an S2 right now before doing anything. And now I have these two, which I can solve with R prime U prime to put this in UBR and this one in F move away from solved. And then an F2 is the F move I need. Alright, here's the next scramble. So looks like for this scramble I have the white and orange corners only one move away from being solved. So I'll go ahead and do those. And if I were doing this in an actual solve, I would essentially just do this move in my head and trace from here. In order to explain it a little bit easier, I will just actually do this move and then explain the tracing from here. So corner number 5 is here in position 3, and corner number 6 is here in position 5. So this is the inverted letter N circlet going backwards. So we would go this way, starting with corner number 4, we have 1, and the next corner is 3. So 1, 3 means we can swap the blue pieces. So we have a swap pair here, a swap pair here, and a swap pair here. So the one I'll choose is the one that's already in the U layer. So we could solve this with F prime U F or F R prime F prime. And since we have to do this F prime here, I'll choose F R prime F prime because it cancels. We would do F prime F. So really all we need to do is R prime F prime. And then I saw this edge here, and I decided it would be better to solve it at the end. So I'll just do U2, S2 to solve that at the end. And there's the CP line. Alright, just one last example for now. I'll have more examples in the next video when I do complete example solves of the entire solve. So for this scramble, I see white and orange looks pretty nice because this edge is attached with this corner. So I could put it in with a wide move like that. So the corner is 2 moves away from being solved, so I'll do the unsolved tracing. I'll swap these two mentally. So corner 5 is actually this one, so it's now in position 6. Corner 6 is in position 5. So this is the inverted lightning bolt circlet going backwards. So instead of going this way, we would go this way. So starting with corner 4, the next two would be 2, 1. So with 2, 1, corner 5 can swap with corner 3. So corner 5 is this one, and 3 is this one. So this is the swap pair we need. We don't have to worry about these other swap pairs because we need the one involving the DFL corner. So to solve the CP line, we can simply do U prime R to place this corner in UBR and this corner in F move away from being solved. And then we can do F wide prime to solve both the corner and the edge. So using wide moves to your advantage like that is definitely a good skill, and it doesn't even have to be when the edge is connected like this. You could do some sort of wide R move while you're setting up a swap pair or something like that. So that will be all for this video. Part 2 will be covering the rest of the solve, which as a whole is probably less complicated than just this first step. So the link to that will be in the description. So make sure you watch that so you actually know how to solve the whole cube. The description will also have some useful links to check out, including the GitHub page and some example solves done by various members of the community. So feel free to leave a comment with any questions you might have, and stay tuned for part 2. I'll see you guys next time.